Dirt tries the charm, right? This is Kemp Smith doing a presentation on this article. Excuse me. Effects of a ketogenic diet on exercise metabolism and physical performance in off-road cyclists. So their introduction here, they started off their introduction by addressing the research that had been done on keto diets for a clinical population. They wanted to get that out of the way. Note that they understand that there's a lot that's been done for the clinical population, but they wanted to touch on the fact there's a lack of research for competitive athletes and the keto diet. It's pretty obvious here that these researchers were off-road cyclists themselves, because if I were them, I would do something similar. They really wanted to see the adaptations to fat oxidation for competitive athletes. They wanted to see, specifically endurance athletes, they wanted to see the potential benefits that a keto diet might have in fat metabolism for energy. They spoke of how on paper, right, this face value, keto seems like it would be phenomenal for endurance athletes, but they also wanted to find out, which will segue here into our objectives, they wanted to find out the specific consequences that may come with being on a ketogenic diet. There has been, some research done on physiological consequences, and these researchers wanted to know if that would affect performance, right? Athletes are always striving to perform at a higher level. So they wanted to find out if these, potential consequences might affect that. So we have them looking at specific hormones and metabolites that they wanted to figure out the effect of keto on it, and then definitely the effect on body mass and body composition. So their hypothesis, being on a keto diet for long term would decrease body mass and body fat content in off-road cyclists, while increasing their fatty acid metabolism during moderate intensity exercise. That's their guess, right? That's their estimation for what this study is going to bear, what the fruit is going to be like at the end of the road. So starting off here, we have the subjects. They took 8 male subjects, kind of a low sample size, which they addressed later, averaged about 28 years of age, all of them having at least 5 years of experience as off-road cyclists, and having a minimum VO2 max of 55 milliliters per kg per minute. I think this is really important. We're the whole point of this research is to find out the effects of a keto diet on competitive athletes. If you're taking someone that has a lower VO2 max number, there's a good chance, maybe that 5 years of experience is them going out every Saturday or, once a month. That doesn't really make them competitive off-road cyclists. So I think it's really important for them to have set this bar. It's just one way of making sure they're testing the right population for this study and for their objectives. So just to address this, it's going to kind of move us into the experiment design itself. So they had 2 phases. There was the preparatory period and the testing phase. The testing phase lasted 3 days, and then the preparatory period was 4 weeks before and after of the specific diet. We'll get to the composition later. The subjects were randomly assigned, none of this funny business with, selecting who gets what, or, claiming one diet over the other. They were randomly assigned to, cover that base to make it more statistically significant. So here with the design, those first few testing days were spent using a progressive cycle ergometer. They wanted to get some preliminary measurements. They wanted to figure out maximal oxygen uptake for the athletes after being on these diets, and they wanted to figure out the cyclist lactate thresholds. This was going to be really important for setting intensities, as we find out in the second bullet. After those preliminary measures were taken, they then were tested. They had to do continuous exercise on the cycle ergometer for 105 minutes. The first 90 were spent at 85% of their specific lactate threshold, and then the last 15 minutes were spent at 115% of lactate threshold. So I think this is really important. They've individualized the tests. It's not some arbitrary general number for all of them. It's very specific to their their person, their individual intensity. And then we want to see them gas out, right? Like these researchers want to push their bodies to the limit. They want to push them to where they can't go on anymore. Throw back to the Wingate test. My goodness. So having them at 115%, they want to know the cortisol, creatine. They want to get all of those numbers after hitting some maximal effort exercise. And then important thing that they did, again, to cover some bases that I wanted to include, these measurements were done the morning of. Those preliminary measurements were taken the morning of, after an overnight fast. So there was no carb loading, nothing that could sway or skew these results. So the diet comp itself. So they had a 3-day dietary recall. 2 of those days are weekdays, and they had a day on the weekend, which I think is also phenomenal, getting a mix of both. The mixed diet consisted of 50% carbs, 30% fats, and 20% proteins, whereas the ketogenic diet consisted of 70% fats and then 15% of both carbs and protein. The average caloric value being, almost 4,000 kcals. This is crazy, y'all. The fact that they have more than double the amount of fats in the keto diet than the mixed diet, it just goes to show we're going to get some pretty extreme, I don't want to say extreme results, but some very typical results for what you would expect someone pulling from fat stores for their exercise. Continuing on with this diet composition a bit, they wanted to look at those hormones, as I mentioned earlier. They wanted to look at cortisol, insulin, other hormones, blood sugar, triglyceride levels, lipid profiles, just to get a full blanket view of all that this, would go into this. So we're going to go over the results here. We're going to be looking at a lot of graphs and tables for me to explain, because I figure that's just going to be easiest to go over all they found. I did want to include this at first, though. They did a 2-way repeated measures ANOVA test, which I think is really important. This is how they're going to put their results forward. This is how they're going to prove that what they've done is statistically significant and shows different results between these 2 measures. So we're going to start off here with table 3, showing body mass and body comp. X is the mean, SD is the standard deviation, and then we can kind of skip over into p-value is this statistically significant variable. So we can see here, just looking at these X's, just looking at the averages, ketogenic is automatically averaging lower than the mixed diet. And we can see on this far right side, the p-value shows us the same thing. As long as that p-value is less than 0.05, what we've done here is statistically significant. So for these researchers, as to be expected with all the research that's been done for keto diets already, the numbers are lower, and it is statistically different between these 2 numbers. Keto diet is statistically more efficient and more fit. It's better used for weight loss, as we know already. So with that, moving on, we're going to get these the lipid profiles and the lipoprotein look as well. My face is blocking off some of it, but yeah, that's okay. I'm here to talk about it. So we can see that the ketogenic diet numbers are higher, which is fantastic. That's if the mixed diet numbers were higher, we would be nervous. Because again, the ketogenic diet, they're literally intaking more than double the number of fats that the mixed group is. To talk about this here, this time limit, the rest 45 minutes, 90 minutes, and then the maximum effort, that's the course of the exercise test. So as if we remember, it's 105 minutes long, the last 15 being at a maximal effort. I think it's really important to know that in most of these, the number in the ketogenic diet is higher. They have more fats to burn. They're doing more with their fats. I think it is important to see some of these numbers on the right that are higher, like the triglycerides, are a little bit higher in the maximal effort, which makes sense. The body is getting ready to pull. It's at a higher intensity. It knows that it's going to gas out eventually, and it's going to need some lower energy. So we're we're starting to get up to similar numbers as the ketogenic diet had been for pretty much the, getting up there in the exercise. So moving on to table 5 here, we get just some really good exercise measurements here: heart rate, VO2, and respiratory exchange ratio. So just to point this one out first, the RER. I think it's really interesting. This is the respiratory exchange. That's inhaling oxygen, exhaling carbon dioxide. So we can see a lower ratio in the ketogenic diet compared to the mixed, right? They're not having to breathe as hard as the mixed diet. That's basically what those numbers are saying. The ketogenic's not having to breathe as hard. They're not having to, they're not having to work as hard. But it's interesting. They're not having to work as hard, but their body numbers are higher. Their heart rate is, their heart's pumping quicker. The body's being more efficient with its, it's got a high volume of O2. I think that just goes to show here until we get to the maximal effort. The whole time ketogenic diet keeps this lead over. If we're looking at this like a race, right? The ketogenic diet is staying ahead pretty much the whole time. And then we hit the maximal effort where ketogenic diet has no glycogen stores. They have no PCR. They start to lag behind. They start to get up there. I think it's 0.94 with the respiratory exchange ratio. They start to get, very close to the mixed diet and how they've been performing. But the mixed diet edges out over the ketogenic diet, which I think just goes to show, the difference here in being mostly aerobic that whole 90 minutes, and then the last 15 being maximal effort anaerobic exercise, and that's when we see the mixed diet coming out ahead. So moving on here, we have these biochemical variables that they wanted to touch on. We've got insulin, glucose, creatine kinase, lactate dehydrogenase activity, as well as testosterone and cortisol. So, as expected, insulin and glucose are both higher in the mixed diet. If it was the other way around, kind of like with the low lipid profile, we would be concerned. The ketogenic diet, they're only intaking 15% carbs, which makes sense why these numbers are lower compared to the mixed diet. The mixed diet's intaking 35% more carbs. So yeah, that, we can definitely see that. And then especially in this maximal effort, right? We get to this far right side and the numbers are higher again, right? That's because the mixed effort has the carbs. They have the fast energy stores. Their body knows what to do with it at that point. But until that point, the ketogenic is still higher. Or excuse me, in certain numbers, right? Specifically the lactic acid, right? This lactate dehydrogenase. I think it's really important to look at this and look at that and the cortisol numbers as well. The higher lactate someone has, the higher cortisol someone has, the more their body's having to work, the more stress their body is under. The ketogenic diet for 90 minutes of this exercise, they're chilling. Their cortisol numbers are lower until we start getting up to that maximal effort, right? Once we get closer to that maximal effort exercise, the numbers, they swap, right? They super swap. At 90 minutes, those fat stores are lagging a little bit, and we can see that the body's not under as much stress for the mixed diet, and the ketogenic diet is specifically with the cortisol. The ketogenic diet is starting to struggle. Their body's under a little bit more stress. It makes sense that the mixed diet stays pretty high given the entire exercise, just because they don't have as much that buffers. It seems that the ketogenic diet has a lot that buffers out that lactic acid. But yeah, and then especially in the creatine as well. We know that creatine kinase is the byproduct of PCR, the phosphocreatine reaction. And once we hit that maximal effort, boom, the number jumps up. They have more they're able to do it with PCR. I mean, the number stays pretty much higher compared to ketogenic the whole time, and that's because they have those PCR stores. They have the phosphate, they have the creatine. It that phosphate's leaving to ADP, it's making ATP, and we're getting a lot of creatine kinase left over as a result. So pushing on here to our first graph. So I want us to kind of keep in mind these numbers, especially these 2 second to last lines here. So this graph is our free fatty acids. Again, it makes sense that the ketogenic is way higher than the mixed. Again, we said they're intaking more than double the amount that the mixed diet is. So this is just showing, again, that content of the free fatty acids in these athletes. We can also see through the course of the exercise, right? Those people on the ketogenic diet, that's a steep slope coming down, and that's showing that they're using fats for metabolism. That's, most of their stuff. Again, they're at 50% carbs, so their bodies don't really have any other option. So they're using that quite a bit for their exercise, whereas the mix is chilling, right, on their free fatty acids. It's a pretty steady drop. There's no ever big incline. It stays pretty steady, which makes sense given what we've learned so far, having a more carb-heavy diet. So again, keeping in mind these second to last numbers here, specifically these two at the 90-minute mark. This is our concentration of lactic acid. Do you see where those second to last bars are? If I could go back, if PowerPoint would let me go back, I would show you the other graph. But that's almost word for word the exact point that the free fatty acids spike, I think. They spike or they go back up. It was almost the same point on each of them. Which just goes to show here, that's when the body's like, okay, put everything we have into this. And the thing that I think is cool with this link between free fatty acid metabolism and lactate threshold is that the ketogenic diet has seen a shift in their lactate threshold. I'm going to say that again. The ketogenic diet saw a shift in their lactate threshold. Now, I believe quite a bit in this shifting your lactate threshold. I think that means you're able to work at a higher intensity for longer. And believe it or not, that's what we see. Right where those numbers peak, that's about where these athletes are gassing out. Right? That's where they're like, okay, nope, I'm done. That's when I stop pedaling on the Wingate and I'm calling it quits because I'm breathing heavy and I'm feeling like I'm about to puke. That's where these athletes are. They're calling it quits. And we can see that these athletes on the ketogenic diet are able to push even past, that 105-minute mark, which I think just goes to show, maybe an advantage of ketogenic diet. Now, would this be different if it was pure maximal effort right off the bat and they slowed it down? 100%. I think that, they definitely did a great job with tailoring this study to really showing the benefits of the ketogenic diet. We're not here to show off the power of carbs. We're here to show off the abilities of the keto diet here, and I think they've done a brilliant job with this graph and the link between the last one. So table 7, these are the physiological variables. This is specifically like the exercise workload, the VO2 max, and then the lactate threshold workload and such. So I just wanted to touch on really quick this anaerobic power in the max workload and the lactate threshold workload. So we see here that at the this maximal level here, the mixed diet is working harder, which makes sense. Again, they have the stores, they have the PCR for it. They're putting in the work. They're doing what they need to. Ketogenic diet, on the other hand, we see a higher number in the VO2 max and the VO2 lactate threshold, which, if I could go back, I could show you the graph. But yeah, we saw a shift in their lactate threshold, and they're not having to use as much oxygen. They're able to work for longer, which we're talking endurance here, right? The anaerobic this mixed diet, their number was higher on the graph, right? Like they were able to exert more power. They had more strength than this ketogenic diet. But the ketogenic diet, man, that was like almost a 10-minute difference with how long they were able to last for. So we just see these two sides of muscle composition here: muscular endurance and muscular strength and power. So we obviously see the results that these guys were hoping for. So with that, we're gonna hop into our discussion. So there was just a broad increase to fat oxidation to those with the ketogenic diet. Specifically, I want to say this number because I feel like it's really impactful. 4 times the concentration of beta hydroxybutyrate, which is the beta oxidation for fats. That's the main byproduct before acetyl-CoA, and then 2 times the concentration of resting plasma-free fatty acids. So their body knew what to do with that stuff. It said, this is what we've got. We don't have much carbs. We don't have those glycogen stores. So we're going to do all that we can to just flood the blood with these fatty acids and get to work with beta oxidation. And we can see that here with those concentration numbers. And then as we saw in that table 3, ketogenic diet seems to favor body mass and body comp, which is what they hypothesized. And we're seeing that that was their result. And then at moderate intensities, ketogenic diet kind of performed as we were expecting it to. It outperformed the mixed diet. And as far as endurance, as far as time went, they're able to work for longer. And then the hormonal changes were also similar to those previously regarded. What was interesting was the testosterone, which I think I failed to mention when we brought it up on the graph. They don't know why the testosterone was lower in the ketogenic diet. They couldn't really find out why. They saw the number was lower and was like, I wonder why that is. And for me personally, this is Kemp's opinion. This is someone who is about to graduate in exercise science. This is my opinion on it. Testosterone is what we use to build back muscle. It's what helps us to kind of get a little bit more bulk, helps to repurpose a lot of that stuff. The body doesn't have a lot that it's doing with muscle power and strength, right? We want the muscles to last for longer, not to exert more power. So maybe the body is repurposing that. It doesn't see as much of a need for testosterone, so it's moving to different things. Maybe it's looking to increase the capillary density in the muscles, and that's taking hormones more than testosterone. So that's my little opinion on it. Again, they couldn't find anything that really explained it, but that if I had to guess, that would be my hypothesis into their study. They did state the limitations. It was a small sample size. Again, they only had 8 subjects, which is a drop in the pond as far as sample sizes go. Generally, you want like closer to 100 subjects to really say that it was statistically impactful. But their p-value was below that 0.05. So for this sample, they were able to say that it was statistically significant. But the greater the sample size, the more confident we can be in those numbers. They did also have to use electrical impedance for body composition, which could have affected certain things with the exercise testing. But they still got those good p-values. So their conclusion, they concluded that long-term high-fat diets may be favorable for endurance athletes during the preparatory season. They had that may be favorable, but those numbers don't lie, right? Like we saw that the lactate threshold had shifted. We saw that they went for longer. Their cortisol was lower. If you're an endurance athlete, if you're a cross-country runner, if you're an off-road cyclist, if you're biking the Tour de France, man, eat a ketogenic diet. Like it's going to make you skinnier, which all of us are shooting for. I think athletes and non-athletes, that's all that we're in this for. But if you're an endurance athlete, you also get the added bonus of performing at a higher level. So, why not? Um, they did also want to conclude that, they're performing at a reduced capacity for higher intensity power, which I feel like I'm kind of a broken record. It's due to low glycogen stores and fewer glycolytic enzymes. Um, yeah, like we need those to exert more force, more power, more strength, and the ketogenic diet just didn't have that. But they went for 10 minutes longer than the mixed diet. So if that's what you're going for, if you want to last for longer, if you want to keep your pace in a marathon, eat a ketogenic diet. That's basically the basis of this study. My personal thoughts, I think they did really well. I talked a lot about all the bases that they covered. Do I wish they had a bigger sample size? Yeah, but also maybe covering some of those bases also limited their study size. That might have made it so that that 5 years of experience in off-road cycling, maybe that's as many as they could find in their city, in their local area, their county. It didn't give me that specific information, but I would like to see a bigger sample size. But that's also just kind of like always, like whenever you're doing a study, it's just hard to get big sample sizes. So I'm not, I don't fault them for it. But would I have liked to see it 100%? I know, but I think that ultimately this is a fantastic study. I think that it can be trusted, and then again, the numbers don't lie. So here's the reference for it. If you'd like to also check it out and read it for yourself, if you happen to be an off-road cyclist, if you happen to do, well, I mean, motocross isn't exactly endurance off-road cycling, but there's my Steve plug for you. But no, I just think that um, the numbers don't lie. They exercised for much longer than the mixed athletes were able to. So yeah, if you'd like to give it a read for yourself, um, you know, see some of the more specific stuff I may have left out, definitely give it a read. So hope you guys liked it. Hope this was entertaining and enlightening.